This week, bishop accountability is front and center, as is the plight of migrants and refugees. And Cuba makes its way onto the papal travel itinerary. Hello and welcome to this edition of Vatican Connections. Updates to the papal travel itinerary never cease. Let's take a look at what they are. Pope Francis will visit Cuba this fall. The Vatican announced this week that the Pope received and accepted the invitation on the part of Cuban authorities and Cuban bishops. Now, he's already coming to the United States this fall for the World Meeting of Families, and he has decided to visit the island nation before arriving in the U.S. We do have one more detail about the Pope's visit to the United States. He will canonize Blessed Junipero Serra on September 23rd in Washington, D.C., on the lawn of the Basilica of the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception. The other big story this week was something that actually didn't happen at the Vatican. Two ships carrying illegal migrants from North Africa to Europe sank. One was still in Libyan waters when it went down. The other ran aground off the Greek island of Rhodes. Now, it's believed more than 800 people were killed. Only 28 survived. On Sunday, Pope Francis informed the faithful gathered for the Angelus about the tragedy. He expressed his pain over the events and called on the international community to act with decisiveness and speed to avoid more deaths. He said the migrants are, quote, are like us, men, women, our siblings, searching for a better life, hungry, persecuted, wounded, exploited, victims of war. Vatican agencies and officials have denounced the trafficking and called on Europe to find a better way to prevent the loss of lives. Now, we'll have more coming up later on when we talk to officials from the Church's aid agency, Caritas International. The accountability of bishops in sexual abuse cases has been much discussed this past week. Bishop Robert Finn of Kansas City, St. Joseph, Missouri, resigned. He was convicted in 2012 of failing to report suspected abuse after an IT technician found photographs of children on a priest's personal computer, and after several people in the diocese actually raised concerns about that priest's behavior with children. Just last week, the Pontifical Commission for the Protection of Minors held an unscheduled meeting to voice their concerns about bishop accountability with the Pope. We know Cardinal Sean O'Malley, the head of that commission, brought the issue to the Pope and the Council of Cardinals, but this resignation was probably in the works for quite some time. And a very unique Bible was given to the Pope this week by the U.S.-based Papal Foundation. The St. John's Bible is the first handwritten and illuminated Bible to be commissioned from a Benedictine abbey, basically since the printing press was invented. It's written on calfskin vellum using traditional tools and inks. The volume presented to Pope Francis is the 7th and final volume, including the Book of Revelation and the Epistles. Only 12 sets of this edition of the Bible were made. Other editions have also been printed and acquired by various institutions. And finally, Pope Francis is set to visit Turin, Italy in June for the Exposition of the Shroud. CNS brings us an advance look at what to expect.
This is a document that precisely coincides with the gospel account of what was done to the man Jesus. When it comes down to what tortures were applied to him, pretty much everything that was mentioned in the Gospels is documented with forensic accuracy on this piece of cloth.
Io ci ho creduto dalla prima volta che l'ho visto e continuo a crederci, però ogni volta mi porta una grandissima emozione.
È stato emozionante e unica come esperienza. Auguro a tutti i giovani di poter capire e di poter osservare con il cuore.
È grandissima, anche perché passare davanti a quel telo è un sospiro di proprio tenere respiro, poi passare e riflettere quello che si è visto, quindi lasciare quel sospiro di sollievo è un'emozione grandissima.
Ma quello che conta di più per il pellegrino e per la Chiesa è che comunque di fronte a questo telo nasce nel cuore delle persone questo richiamo continuo e costante a ciò che Gesù ha fatto e a ciò che Gesù ha donato all'umanità.
Say the words Mediterranean Sea, and the first thing that comes to mind are usually sunny beaches and relaxing vacations. But for tens of thousands of people from Africa and increasingly the Middle East, Europe's Mediterranean and Aegean coastline is a promised land, that place where they've been told a better life is possible. Most, however, never see that promised land. Overcrowded boats carrying illegal migrants regularly go down in the waters between Africa and Europe. The latest such tragedy took place this past week. It's estimated more than 800 people lost their lives trying to reach Italy and Greece. Joining me is Carolina Babica. She is a specialist on European migration for Caritas Europe. Carolina, thank you for joining us. We've all heard about the boats that have been rescued over the weekend and throughout the week. This is not the first time the scene has played out like this in the waters south of Italy. Can you give us a sense of how frequently this happens and how many lives are affected?
Well, this has been going on actually already for years. So there have been people coming to Europe through different channels, but through the Mediterranean Sea, more and more frequently we see people coming, also partly because the EU has actually has sealed off some of the other borders. So some of the land borders, for example, in Bulgaria or Greece have been actually sealed off. So consequently, more and more people come through the Mediterranean Sea. And of course, there has been a large increase during last year already. And it continues to be the case this year, mainly because of the war in Syria that's going on now for years already. Plus the very, very difficult situation in other countries that actually generate refugees, like Eritrea or Somalia, for example. So this has been going on for a very long time. For the numbers, I can tell you in 2015 so far, we had 36,000 refugees or migrants that reached Italy through the sea. But there were also some reported deaths at sea, quite a substantial number. So we speak about 1,700, 1,800 of people who died just this year in the Mediterranean Sea. But of course, that's also an estimation, and we don't always know about all the people that die on this route.
Now, as long as boats have been crossing these waters full of people trying to reach Europe, European countries have also been trying to figure out what to do without much success. Can you tell us a bit about what has been done by European countries and what Caritas is actually calling on these countries to do?
Well, that's the next step, that actually even those that are among the lucky ones that make it to Europe, then they might not actually find what they were looking for at the first place. As, for example, in Greece, the asylum system is very much in a crisis. So it's very difficult for people to ask for asylum. It's very difficult to get basic like their basic needs covered, like for example healthcare for children, or possibly a shelter or some food, even blankets, very basic things. So even refugees that ask for asylum, they might find themselves still living in the streets in Greece, and that of course is not the way Europe should be treating refugees. So that's also why many people then have to continue the journey and then take another smuggler's route around Europe, and they actually try to go to another country like maybe Germany or Sweden, where they would be treated in a better way. We can all do our part, and, for example, face and oppose negative discourse against migrants, against policies that are actually against human rights. And I think this is also what the Pope Francis has called for, to really step against this globalization of indifference. That's what we see at the moment, that more and more people and politicians just do not care about migrants and refugees, and it can create terrible sufferings of people.
Now, Carolina, the argument has been made that expanding the current naval patrol so that it can actually do search and rescue will only encourage people smugglers and illegal migrants even more. The idea is that they'll think they're guaranteed a safe crossing because European navies will rescue them if their boats are in distress. Now, is there any merit to this argument? Why?
First of all, yesterday the European Council actually agreed to triple the budget of the Frontex Operation Triton, currently patrolling in the Mediterranean Sea. So that's actually already happening, that they're getting more money, but it's true that their clear mandate is not to save lives, but to patrol the borders. But of course, under international law of the sea, when they actually see a boat in distress, they have the obligation to save people. So it still is a small step in the right direction, and they are actually going to be potentially saving more people. But if we look at the statistics and this argument of the pull factor, you can see that last year, from January to April, the number of people who were trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea was exactly the same as this year. But we have much more deaths, twice as many dead people in the first 4 months of this year. And it's exactly because last year we had this search and rescue operation run by the Italian government, the Mare Nostrum operation. And now it has been replaced by this Frontex Triton operation, which is much smaller mandate, and it's not going directly, like focusing mainly on search and rescue.
Can you tell us a little bit, where are these migrants coming from? The migrants we see on these ships crossing the Mediterranean, where are they coming from, and what have they done, what have they gone through just to get to that point?
It's actually the trip across the Mediterranean Sea. It's often the very, very last part of an extremely long journey. For example, a Syrian family that loses their house, they could flee to Lebanon, spend some time there, then see it's actually not possible to survive, and then consider where to go further. They might live in Egypt for a while, try to cope, try to establish a living there. But as with the current situation in Egypt, this is also getting more and more difficult, and people are more afraid, and they're actually not able to sustain themselves. They're not able to work. They might then actually have to go to Libya and then look for maybe a smuggler's gang that would actually help them to get on the boat and then cross the Mediterranean Sea. But of course, this might not be like from one day to another. It might mean weeks of waiting in terrible situations in the streets, somewhere in camps, or in some like small camps for migrants where the smugglers might keep them so that the journey is secret. Or you have people who cross the whole Sahara Desert before coming to Libya, Tunisia, from where they would take the boat. So also what they experience on the journey are terrible things. People are kidnapped, people are being raped, people are like experiencing all sorts of violence until they actually come to the point when they manage to take the boat, and then they might not even be able to reach Europe.
Carolina, thank you for talking to us. That was Carolina Babica, a migration expert with Caritas Europe. Time to take a look now at what Pope Francis has been doing this week. On Monday, Pope Francis met with the bishops of Gabon on their ad limina visit. He urged them to speak out, promoting the sanctity of human life. Wednesday was the general audience. This time, the Pope focused on the complementarity of men and women. CNS has details.
Il peccato genera diffidenza e divisione fra l'uomo e la donna. Il loro rapporto verrà insidiato da 1000 forme di prevaricazione e di assoggettamento, di seduzione ingannevole e di prepotenza umiliante, fino a quelle più drammatiche e violente. La storia ne porta le tracce. Pensiamo ad esempio agli eccessi negativi delle culture patriarcali. Pensiamo alle molteplici forme di maschilismo, dove la donna era considerata di seconda classe. Pensiamo alla strumentalizzazione e mercificazione del corpo femminile nell'attuale cultura mediatica, ma pensiamo anche alla recente epidemia di sfiducia, di scetticismo e persino di ostilità che si diffonde nella nostra cultura, in particolare a partire di una comprensibile diffidenza delle donne riguardo a una alleanza fra uomo e donna che sia capace al tempo stesso di affinare l'intimità della comunione e di custodire la dignità della differenza. Se non troviamo un soprassalto di simpatia per questa alleanza, capace di porre le nuove generazioni al riparo della sfiducia e della indifferenza, i figli verranno al mondo sempre più sradicati da essa fin dal grembo materno. La svalutazione sociale per l'alleanza stabile e generativa dell'uomo e della donna è certamente una perdita per tutti. Dobbiamo riportare in onore il matrimonio e la famiglia.
And Thursday was a holiday at the Vatican because it was the Pope's name day or saint day. Of course, before becoming Pope Francis, he was Jorge or George, and it was the feast of Saint George. And on Friday, Pope Francis met with the bishops of Namibia, Lesotho on their ad limina visit. And let's take a closer look now at the resignations and nominations that happened this week. As we mentioned earlier, Bishop Robert Finn of Kansas City, St. Joseph, Missouri, resigned this week. Again, he was convicted in 2012 of failing to report suspected child abuse. In 2014, the Vatican sent Canadian Archbishop Terence Prendergast to Kansas City to conduct an apostolic visitation. We also learned that the Holy See has named Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City, Kansas, as administrator until a new bishop can be appointed. And Victoria in Texas has a new bishop. Father Brendan Cahill of Galveston, Houston, has been named to lead the faithful of Victoria. He succeeds Bishop David Fellhauer, who retired after reaching the mandatory retirement age of 75.
Oggi ci celebra la giornata mondiale del migrante e del rifugiato. Voi siete vicini al cuore della Chiesa, perché la Chiesa è un popolo in cammino verso il regno di Dio che Gesù Cristo ha portato in mezzo a noi. Non perdete la speranza di un mondo migliore.
Ho trovato gioia qui. Io so che tanti di voi hanno motivi per non essere gioiosi, ma ho trovato gioia nei momenti dove la notte è più oscura. Voi sapete perché la notte in quel momento è più oscura? Perché è vicina l'aurora.
A casa fra voi, grazie, perché uno può andare a fare una visita e sentire tutto educato, tutto col protocollo, ma non c'è il calore. Fra voi trovate il calore dell'accoglienza, come una famiglia.
Well, that's it for this edition of Vatican Connections. Join us again next week when we actually take a deeper look at the Jubilee year for mercy. As always, you can follow us on Twitter for updates or Facebook, or watch us on demand on Roku TV. From everyone here, thanks for watching and see you next time.